The vast emptiness of interstellar space stretched before Captain Kara Shin as she stood at the command bridge of the Aegis 7. Through the massive viewport, she could see the other 11 ships of her interplanetary rescue corps fleet, their hulls gleaming under the distant starlight. Each vessel carried essential supplies and medical personnel bound for the struggling colony on Proxima 4. "Captain, all systems nominal. We're maintaining formation and our trajectory remains stable," reported Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez from the navigation console. Kara nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing their course through the upper space-time corridor. The year 2389 had been particularly challenging for humanity's outer colonies, with resource shortages and unexpected solar flares causing widespread devastation. As commander of the IRC's flagship rescue vessel, she had seen her share of suffering, but the reports from Proxima 4 were especially dire. "Time to destination?" she asked, her voice calm, but carrying the weight of responsibility that had become second nature over her 15 years of service. "Approximately 43 hours, Captain," Rodriguez answered. "The space-time currents are cooperating for once." Kara allowed herself a small smile. The IRC had been established nearly 4 decades ago, when humanity's expansion beyond the solar system necessitated a dedicated rescue and relief force. What had begun as a small fleet of retrofitted transport ships had grown into a respected humanitarian organization, with state-of-the-art vessels specifically designed for crisis response. The Aegis 7 was the pride of the fleet, a massive, sleek vessel with extensive medical facilities, food production capabilities, and modular compartments that could be reconfigured based on mission requirements. Currently, it carried over 3,000 civilians evacuated from a mining outpost that had suffered catastrophic equipment failures, along with 500 medical personnel and engineers bound for Proxima 4. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Julian Park, his brow furrowed as he adjusted his earpiece. "I'm picking up unusual energy readings at the edge of our sensor range." Kara turned toward him, instantly alert. "Source?" "Unknown, ma'am. It doesn't match any registered vessel signatures in our database." "Put it on the main display." The holographic projection in the center of the bridge shifted to show a cluster of anomalous energy readings approximately 2 light minutes from their position. As the bridge crew watched, the readings intensified, forming patterns that pulsed with an unsettling rhythm. "Could be a natural phenomenon," suggested Security Chief Omar Reyes, though his hand instinctively moved to rest on his sidearm. "Some kind of quantum fluctuation in the corridor?" Before anyone could respond, the ship's AI, Area, spoke through the ship-wide communication system. "Warning. Energy signature consistent with weapon systems detected. Threat assessment, critical. Recommend immediate evasive action." Kara's training kicked in instantly. "Shields to maximum. Evasive pattern Delta 6. Alert the fleet." But her commands came too late. The space around them seemed to twist, reality itself bending as the first wave of quantum weaponry tore through the upper space-time corridor. The Aegis 7 shuddered violently, throwing crew members against consoles and bulkheads. Emergency lights flashed as the main power fluctuated. "We've been hit!" shouted Omar over the blaring alarms. "Port shield generators are down!" Through the viewport, Kara watched in horror as 2 of the smaller vessels in her fleet erupted in silent explosions, debris scattering into the void. The remaining ships attempted to maneuver, but the attack had been perfectly timed and positioned. "Multiple hostiles detected," Arya announced. "Unknown configuration. They appear to have emerged from concealed positions." On the main display, Kara now saw them, sleek, angular vessels with hulls that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. They moved with impossible precision, their weapon systems targeting the most vulnerable points of the IRC fleet. "Get me a channel to all ships," Kara ordered, steadying herself against her command chair as another impact rocked the vessel. "And prepare the emergency evacuation protocols for our civilians." Communications are being jammed. Captain, Julian replied, his fingers flying over his console. I can't get a clear signal out. Our distress beacon is also being suppressed. Engineering reports critical damage to propulsion systems, added First Officer Elena Torres, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. We're effectively immobilized. A third blast hit them, this one penetrating the weakened shields entirely. The bridge lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency lighting. From somewhere deep within the ship came the sound of tearing metal and the sudden, terrifying rush of decompression. Hull breach, decks 12 through 15, Arya reported, her synthetic voice remaining calm even as she delivered catastrophic news. Life support failing in civilian quarters Alpha through Delta. Kara felt ice form in her veins. Those sectors held over 1,000 evacuees, including hundreds of children. Get damage control teams there now. Reroute power from non-essential systems to maintain those life support systems. But even as she gave the orders, she knew it was likely too late for many of them. The attack had been too sudden, too precise, as if the assailants knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum casualties. Captain, Omar said quietly, standing beside her now. Look, on the remaining functional display, a new vessel had appeared, larger than the others, with a distinctive design that suggested it served as a command ship. It held position at a distance, observing the devastation its fleet had wrought. They're hailing us, Julian announced, surprise evident in his voice. On screen, Kara ordered, straightening her posture despite the pain radiating from her ribs, likely broken in the initial impact. The display flickered and revealed a humanoid figure, though clearly not human. Tall and gaunt, with obsidian skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. The alien regarded Kara with eyes that held no recognizable emotion. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the ship's systems into a dissonant approximation of human speech. Your vessels violated sovereign territory of the Black Tempest Concordat. Your presence is unwelcome. Your mission is terminated. Kara stepped forward, anger momentarily overriding protocol. This is Captain Kara Shin of the Earth Interplanetary Rescue Corps vessel Aegis 7. We are on a humanitarian mission to deliver aid to civilian colonies. We have no hostile intent. Your unprovoked attack has resulted in thousands of civilian casualties. The alien figure, presumably their commander, tilted its head slightly. Your species expands without consent. You take what is not yours. This corridor belongs to the Concordat. Your humanitarian mission is irrelevant. We had no knowledge of any territorial claim to this region of space, Kara insisted. Our navigation charts show this as neutral territory, open to peaceful transit under interstellar conventions. Your ignorance does not absolve your trespass, the alien replied. The warning has been delivered. Further incursions will be met with similar response. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence, broken only by the continuing alarms and damage reports flowing in from all sections of the ship. They're withdrawing, Omar reported, monitoring the tactical display. All hostile vessels returning to their command ship. Kara watched as the alien fleet regrouped around their flagship and then, in a maneuver that defied known physics, seemed to fold into themselves and vanish. Status report, she demanded, turning to face her battered crew. I need casualties, damage assessment, and our communication capabilities. The reports came in, each worse than the last. Of the 12 ships in the IRC fleet, 5 had been completely destroyed. 3 others, including the Aegis 7, had suffered catastrophic damage. The remaining 4 had sustained varying degrees of damage, but remained operational. The human cost was devastating. On the Aegis 7 alone, preliminary reports indicated over 800 civilian deaths and hundreds more injured. The medical bays were overwhelmed, with the ship's doctors and medics working desperately to save those they could. Communication systems are partially restored, Julian announced after nearly an hour of repairs. But we can only manage short-range transmissions to the other ships. Our quantum entanglement communicator was targeted specifically. We can't reach Earth. What about the emergency subspace beacon? Kara asked. Also destroyed. It seems they knew exactly what to target to isolate us. The implication was clear. This had been no random encounter or misunderstanding. The attack had been meticulously planned to inflict maximum damage while preventing the fleet from calling for help. "Captain," Elena said, approaching with a medical technician who insisted on examining Kara's injuries. "The surviving ships are requesting instructions, and Dr. Laymin from the medical bay is asking to speak with you urgently." Kara winced as the medic applied a regenerative patch to her ribs. "Tell the other captains to focus on stabilizing their vessels and treating casualties. Have Dr. Min meet me in emergency medical in 10 minutes. She turned to Omar. "I want security teams doing sweeps for any potential boarding parties or sabotage devices. We can't rule out that this attack might have been a prelude to something else." As the bridge crew carried out her orders, Kara allowed herself a moment to process what had just occurred. The IRC had always operated under the assumption that its humanitarian mission would be respected, even in contested regions of space. Never in its history had a rescue fleet been deliberately targeted. The implications were staggering. If word of this attack reached Earth, the response would likely be severe. The Planetary Strategic Council, which governed humanity's interstellar affairs, would not allow such an assault on civilian vessels to go unanswered. Kara made her way to the emergency medical bay, moving carefully through corridors that bore the scars of battle, exposed wiring, emergency force fields containing breached sections, and worst of all, the rows of bodies being respectfully covered and moved aside to make room for those who might still be saved. Dr. Lei Ming met her at the entrance to the makeshift triage center that had been established in what had once been a recreation area. The Vietnamese physician's usually immaculate appearance was now disheveled, his uniform stained with blood of various colors, his eyes reflecting exhaustion and horror. "Captain," he greeted her, his voice hoarse. "We're beyond capacity. I've got patients in hallways, and we're running dangerously low on synthetic blood and regenerative compounds." "How bad?" Kara asked simply. 873 confirmed dead, over 1,000 injured, with at least 300 in critical condition. He ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair. "Many of them are children, Captain. The civilian quarters that were hit. They were housing the families we evacuated from the mining outpost." Kara felt the weight of each death personally. These people had been under her protection. "What do you need from me, Doctor?" "Authorization to convert Cargo Bay 3 into an additional treatment facility. And," he hesitated, "we need to discuss triage protocols. Captain, we don't have enough resources to treat everyone." The implication was clear. They would need to make impossible decisions about who would receive the limited medical resources available. "You have the authorization for the cargo bay," Kara said immediately. "As for triage," she took a deep breath. "Standard IRC protocols apply. Prioritize those with the highest chance of survival where resources are limited. But Doctor, do everything possible to stretch what we have." Min nodded grimly. "There's something else you should know. Some of the injuries we're seeing, they're unlike anything I've encountered before. The quantum weapons used against us seem to have caused cellular disruption at a fundamental level. We're seeing cases where patients appear stable one moment, then suffer catastrophic cellular collapse the next. Can you counter it? We're trying various approaches, but without understanding the exact nature of the weapons." He shook his head. "We're essentially experimenting in real time, Captain." Before Kara could respond, her communicator chirped. "Captain," came Omar's voice. "We've got something you need to see." One of our auxiliary communications arrays managed to pick up a transmission from a nearby monitoring buoy. It captured the entire attack and automatically relayed it through the subspace network before the aliens could jam it. Meaning? Meaning Earth already knows what happened to us. Captain, the Planetary Strategic Council received the footage approximately 40 minutes ago. Kara closed her eyes briefly. The response from Earth would be coming, and given the nature of the attack, it would likely be overwhelming. "I'll be right there," she told Omar. Then turned back to Dr. Min. "Keep me updated on the medical situation. And Dr." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for what you're doing." As she made her way back to the bridge, Kara couldn't help but wonder what form Earth's retaliation would take. The IRC had always been a humanitarian organization, divorced from military operations, but an attack of this magnitude against civilian vessels could not go unanswered. The question that troubled her most was what role she and her surviving crew would be expected to play in whatever came next. On Earth, the atmosphere in the Planetary Strategic Council's emergency session was electric with tension and barely contained fury. The holographic display at the center of the circular chamber replayed the attack on the IRC fleet for the 12th time, each viewing stoking the collective outrage of the assembled leaders. Admiral Helena Zhao, chairperson of the council, stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her expression carved from stone as she watched the destruction unfold once again. When the recording finished, she turned to address the 24 other members of the council. "The death toll currently stands at 3,729 confirmed," she stated, her voice controlled but edged with steel. "Over 2,000 more injured, many critically. 12 IRC vessels attacked without provocation or warning while on a humanitarian mission." She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show the alien commander who had briefly communicated with Captain Shin. "Our xenolinguists and intelligence analysts have identified this species as the Var-Rek, a reclusive civilization from the Rho Centauri system. Until now, contact has been minimal and largely non-hostile. They call themselves the Black Tempest Concordat in our closest translation." "Did they attempt any communication before attacking?" asked Counselor Nadia Patel, representing the Earth's United Governance. "None," Admiral Zhao replied. "No warnings, no challenges, no attempts at diplomatic contact. They emerged from concealed positions and immediately opened fire on clearly marked humanitarian vessels." "And their claim about territorial violations?" inquired Counselor Alejandro Vega, the representative for the outer colonies. "Our records show no registered claims to that sector of space," replied Ambassador Julia Chen, head of Interstellar Diplomatic Affairs. "We maintain extensive mapping of claimed territories and disputed regions. The upper space-time corridor used by the IRC fleet has been considered neutral transit space for over 50 years. So this was an unprovoked massacre of civilians and humanitarian workers," stated Counselor Marcus Kim, his voice hard. "The question before us is not whether we respond, but how severely." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Admiral Zhao nodded to General Isaac Montgomery, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, who stepped forward. "We have prepared several response options," he began, his weathered face grave. "Before I detail them, I must emphasize that our initial analysis suggests the Var-Rek possess quantum weapons technology that exceeds our current capabilities. The precision of their attack and their ability to specifically target communication systems indicates advanced tactical sophistication." "Are you suggesting we should not retaliate, General?" asked Counselor Fatima Al-Farsi, her tone challenging. "Not at all, Counselor. I am merely providing context for the military realities we face." He waved his hand, and the holographic display changed to show a star map of the region. "We have identified 3 major Var-Rek outposts in neighboring systems, including what appears to be their primary forward base in the Rho Centauri system." He highlighted a space station orbiting the 4th planet in the system. "This installation seems to serve as their regional command center and was likely the origin point for the attack fleet." "What are our options?" Admiral Zhao asked, bringing the discussion back to its central purpose. General Montgomery displayed three different tactical scenarios. Option 1 is a diplomatic approach coupled with a show of force. We send a heavily armed fleet to the edge of their territory and demand reparations and assurances against future attacks. Few around the table seemed impressed by this option. Option 2 is a targeted strike against their forward base, designed to demonstrate our capabilities while minimizing alien casualties. There were some nods of approval, but still not widespread enthusiasm. Option 3, the general continued, his voice noticeably cooler, is what my staff has designated Operation Unforgiven, a comprehensive military response targeting all known VAR-REC installations in the region, with the goal of neutralizing their offensive capabilities entirely. The chamber fell silent as the implications of this third option sank in. "Casualties?" asked Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the council's ethical advisor, his expression troubled. "Significant," General Montgomery acknowledged. "But the alternative is to leave a hostile force with superior weaponry unchecked. One that has already demonstrated a willingness to target civilian vessels without provocation." "This wouldn't be a police action or a limited engagement," noted Councillor Vega. "This would be war." "They declared war when they attacked our rescue fleet," Councillor Kim countered. "They murdered thousands of civilians, including children. What are we discussing here?" Admiral Zhao raised a hand to calm the rising emotions. "We must consider all aspects of this situation. A disproportionate response could have far-reaching diplomatic consequences with other species." "With respect, Admiral," interjected Colonel Aisha Carter, recently appointed to the Council to represent military intelligence. "Our analysis suggests the VAR-REC attack was not impulsive, but calculated. The precision targeting of communication systems indicates they wanted to prevent any distress calls. If not for that automated monitoring buoy, we might still be unaware of the attack." She stood and approached the holographic display, highlighting certain aspects of the alien vessels. Furthermore, the configuration of their fleet suggests this was not a border patrol that happened upon our ships, but a strike force specifically assembled for the attack. Her words hung in the air, the implication clear. This had been a premeditated act of aggression, not a misunderstanding or an overreaction to a perceived territorial violation. Admiral Zhao surveyed the faces of her fellow council members, reading the shift in the room's mood. "I believe we should put this to a formal vote. The options before us are—" "If I may, Admiral," interrupted Ambassador Chen, "I believe we should make one diplomatic overture before committing to military action. A formal communication expressing our outrage and demanding an explanation and reparations." "And if they ignore us or respond with further aggression," asked Councillor Al-Farsi, "then we will have made our position clear and can proceed with a military response with the moral high ground firmly established." The ambassador replied. After further discussion, the Council agreed to a modified approach. A single, clear diplomatic message would be sent, with a 24-hour deadline for response. Simultaneously, military forces would be assembled and positioned for immediate action should diplomacy fail. The diplomatic message was transmitted. 24 hours passed with no response from the VAR-REC. The Council reconvened and voted. Operation Unforgiven was approved by a margin of 21-4. In the aftermath of the attack, the surviving IRC vessels had managed to limp to a small human outpost on the edge of the Proxima system, with limited facilities, but safe from immediate danger. Captain Kara Shin focused on stabilizing her wounded crew and passengers while awaiting word from Earth. 6 days after the attack, that word came in the form of a military transport carrying Colonel Aisha Carter and a full contingent of Earth Defense Force personnel. Kara met them in the outpost's small administrative center, still wearing her damaged IRC uniform, a visible reminder of the attack that had claimed so many lives. "Captain Shin," Colonel Carter greeted her, saluting despite the fact that the IRC was technically a civilian organization. I'm here on behalf of the Planetary Strategic Council. Colonel, Kara returned the salute instinctively, her years in Earth's Navy before joining the IRC still ingrained in her movements. I assume you've been fully briefed on what happened to my fleet. I've seen the recordings. Captain, the entire Earth has... There isn't a person on the planet who hasn't watched your ships being attacked and heard that alien commander's cold justification. Colonel Carter's eyes reflected a controlled anger. The public response has been intense. I can imagine, Kara replied, gesturing for the colonel to follow her to a more private area. Once they were alone, she asked the question foremost in her mind. What's the council's response going to be? Colonel Carter's expression turned grim. The Planetary Strategic Council has authorized Operation Unforgiven, a full military response against all known Black Tempest installations in the region. Despite having anticipated this, Kara felt a chill run through her. The IRC is a humanitarian organization. Colonel, we don't participate in military operations. Under normal circumstances, that would be true, Carter acknowledged. But these are not normal circumstances. The attack on your fleet has changed things. Captain Shin, the Council is invoking Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha. Kara stiffened. Protocol 7 Alpha was rarely mentioned and had never been implemented in her lifetime. It allowed for the temporary militarization of civilian assets in extreme circumstances. You're conscripting my ships and crew. Not exactly. Colonel Carter produced a data tablet and handed it to Kara. The Council is offering you command of a special task force, Nemesis Squadron. Your experience with the Varrek and your first-hand knowledge of their capabilities make you uniquely qualified. Kara scanned the information on the tablet, her expression growing increasingly troubled. This isn't a defensive operation, Colonel. This is a full-scale retaliatory strike. It's what's necessary, Carter replied firmly. The Varrek must understand that attacking humanitarian vessels results in consequences they cannot bear. And if I refuse? Then someone else will lead the squadron, Captain. But it will proceed either way. The decision has been made. Colonel Carter's voice softened slightly. I understand your reservations. The IRC stands for saving lives, not taking them. But consider this, how many future rescue missions will be attacked if this goes unanswered? How many more civilians will die? Kara set the tablet down, her mind racing through the implications. She thought of the bodies they were still identifying, of the children who would never grow up, of Dr. Min working himself to exhaustion, trying to save those he could. I want to speak with my crew first, she finally said. This affects all of us. Of course, Colonel Carter agreed. But we need your decision within 12 hours. The operation has a narrow window for optimal execution. After the colonel left, Kara gathered her senior officers in the outpost's conference room. The mood was somber as she explained the council's decision and the role they were being asked to play. This isn't what we signed up for, said Communications Officer Julian Park, voicing what many were thinking. We're rescue workers, not soldiers. Most of us were military before joining the IRC, Omar Reyes pointed out. I served 8 years in the Marine Corps. I still remember how to fight. That's not the point, countered Dr. Lehman, who had insisted on attending despite his ongoing work with the wounded. The question isn't whether we can fight, but whether we should. Vengeance isn't justice. Tell that to the families of our dead, said Engineer Sophia Wilson, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. 873 civilians on our ship alone. They targeted the sectors with the highest civilian concentration first. The debate continued, passions running high on both sides. Some, like Dr. Min, argued for maintaining the IRC's humanitarian principles even in the face of tragedy. Others, like Omar and Sophia, saw participation in Operation Unforgiven as both a duty and a necessary response to prevent future attacks. Throughout the discussion, First Officer Elena Torres remained quiet, observing. When there was finally a lull, all eyes turned to her. "Elena," Kara prompted, "your thoughts?" The first officer straightened in her chair. "I joined the IRC after serving in Earth's Navy because I believed in our mission of saving lives. I still do." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But I also believe in protecting the innocent. If we do nothing, if we allow this attack to go unanswered, we're tacitly accepting that rescue ships are valid targets." She looked around the table, meeting each person's gaze. "I don't want to be part of a military operation, but I want even less to be part of a future where humanitarian missions are abandoned because they're too dangerous. If our participation helps ensure that never happens again, then I believe it's the right choice." Her words shifted the mood in the room. Even Dr. Min, though still troubled, seemed to recognize the weight of her argument. Kara finally stood. Her decision made. "I'll accept command of Nemesis Squadron on one condition: that our objective includes the rescue of any human prisoners the Varrek may have taken, and that we minimize unnecessary casualties. We'll demonstrate our strength, but we won't become what we're fighting against." When she informed Colonel Carter of her decision, the military officer nodded with satisfaction. "The retrofitting of your remaining vessels will begin immediately. The Aegis 7 will be temporarily recommissioned as a command vessel, with full weapon systems and enhanced shielding." "And my condition?" "Accepted," Carter confirmed. "The operational parameters will include search and rescue components. But make no mistake, Captain Shin, the primary objective remains the neutralization of the Varrek threat." Over the next 72 hours, the surviving IRC ships underwent a startling transformation. Military-grade shield generators and weapon systems were installed, their hulls reinforced with advanced composite materials. The medical bays were expanded and enhanced, though for a very different purpose than their original design. Earth Defense Force personnel were integrated with the IRC crews, providing specialized training and support. Many were veterans who had volunteered specifically for this mission after seeing the footage of the attack. Throughout the preparations, Kara struggled with the moral implications of what they were about to do. The IRC had been founded on principles of humanitarian aid and neutrality. Taking up arms, even in response to a direct attack, felt like a betrayal of those ideals. Yet when she walked through the medical bay and saw the rows of injured civilians, many of whom would bear permanent scars, both physical and psychological, she found her resolve strengthening. There were times when force was necessary to protect the innocent. This, she believed, was one of those times. On the eve of their departure, Dr. Min found her in her quarters, reviewing the final operational plans. "Captain," he said, standing at attention in the doorway, "may I speak with you?" "Of course, Doctor," she gestured for him to enter. "What's on your mind?" Min stepped inside, his expression troubled. "I've been thinking about our conversation in the conference room, about vengeance versus justice. And I still believe that vengeance is a dangerous path," he said slowly. "But I've also been treating patients who will never fully recover from what happened to them. Children who lost parents. Parents who lost children." He met her gaze directly. "I cannot in good conscience say we should do nothing." Kara nodded, understanding the difficult journey he had taken to reach this conclusion. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying that while I cannot participate in combat operations, I will ensure that our medical facilities are prepared to treat any prisoners or civilians we rescue. And," he hesitated, "I will not judge those who believe that a show of force is necessary in this situation." It was as close to an endorsement as she would get from the principled physician, and Kara appreciated the gesture for what it was, a recognition of the complex moral landscape they were navigating. "Thank you, Doctor," she said simply. "Your perspective has been valuable throughout this process, especially when it challenged my thinking." As men turned to leave, he paused. "Captain, just remember who we are, what the IRC stands for. In the heat of battle, it can be easy to forget." His words stayed with her as she finalized the mission parameters and prepared to address the combined IRC and military personnel who would form Nemesis Squadron. In less than 24 hours, they would depart for the Rho Centauri system, carrying with them the weight of Earth's response to an unprecedented attack. What had begun as a humanitarian mission had transformed into something very different, a test of humanity's resolve and, perhaps more importantly, its restraint in the face of provocation. Nemesis Squadron emerged from subspace at the edge of the Rho Centauri system, a formation of 20 ships that represented the full might of Earth's retaliatory force. At its center, the Aegis 7, now heavily armed and armored, served as the command vessel, with Captain Kara Shin coordinating the operation from its bridge. "All ships reporting ready, Captain," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez from the tactical station. "Defense systems at full capacity." Kara surveyed the holographic display showing their target, a massive space station orbiting the system's fourth planet, identified as the headquarters of the Black Tempest Concordat in this region of space. Surrounding it were 7 orbital defense platforms and a fleet of approximately 90 Varrek vessels of various configurations. "Life signs?" she asked, turning to Science Officer Takahashi. "Sensors are detecting approximately 12,000 Varrek on the station, and ships combined," he reported. "No human signatures detected yet, but there are areas of the station our sensors cannot penetrate." Kara nodded, then opened a channel to the entire squadron. "All vessels, this is Captain Shin. Our mission parameters are clear. Demonstrate Earth's resolve while minimizing unnecessary casualties. Target military assets only. Any sign of human prisoners or civilians is to be reported immediately. Remember why we're here, not just for retribution, but to ensure that humanitarian missions will be respected in the future." She closed the channel and turned to Omar, now serving as her tactical advisor. "Begin with the defense platforms. I want precision strikes. Disable rather than destroy where possible." "Understood, Captain," Omar replied, relaying the commands to the squadron's attack vessels. The first wave of Earth ships accelerated toward the outer defense perimeter, their weapons charged and ready. As they came within range, the Varrek platforms opened fire, quantum energy beams lancing through space toward the approaching vessels. But unlike the IRC fleet that had been caught unprepared, Nemesis Squadron had been specifically equipped to counter these weapons. Advanced shields absorbed or deflected the energy, while electronic countermeasures disrupted the targeting systems of the Varrek defenses. The Earth vessels responded with overwhelming force, concentrating fire on the nearest platform. Within moments, its shields failed, and precision strikes disabled its weapon systems and power core, leaving it adrift but largely intact. "One down," Omar reported, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "Moving to targets 2 and 3. The pattern repeated across the defense perimeter. The Earth ships methodically neutralized the Varrek platforms one by one, demonstrating both technological prowess and tactical discipline. It was a stark message. Humanity would not be outmatched or intimidated. As the last defense platform went dark, the Varrek fleet began to mobilize, their ships forming attack formations around the central station. "They're deploying in standard defensive clusters," observed Colonel Carter, who had joined the operation as a liaison between Nemesis Squadron and Earth Command. "Typical of their tactical doctrine, based on what limited information we have." "Let them come to us," Kara ordered. "Maintain our position and formation." The Varrek fleet advanced, their sleek vessels moving with the same unnerving precision that had characterized their attack on the IRC ships. But this time, the humans were prepared. "All ships engage according to assigned targets," Kara commanded. "Remember, this is a demonstration of force, not an extermination mission. Disable when possible, destroy when necessary." The space between the opposing fleets erupted in a spectacular display of advanced weaponry. Quantum beams, plasma torpedoes, and graviton pulses crisscrossed the void, some finding their targets while others were absorbed by increasingly sophisticated defensive systems. Earth's ships, though fewer in number, had been equipped with the latest technological developments, some accelerated specifically for this mission. The Varrek, despite their apparent advantages, found themselves facing an enemy that had studied their previous attack and adapted accordingly. "We've disabled 12 enemy vessels and destroyed 7, reported Omar after the first 30 minutes of engagement. "Our casualties are minimal, 2 ships with moderate damage, no catastrophic failures." Kara nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Varrek fleet was beginning to show signs of disorganization, their formation breaking apart as Earth's forces pressed their advantage. "Captain," called out Julian from communications, "we're receiving a transmission from the Varrek command station." "On screen," Kara ordered, straightening in her chair. The main display flickered to life, showing the same alien commander who had so coldly dismissed the IRC fleet's humanitarian mission. Now, however, there was something different in its bearing, a tension that suggested concern, perhaps even fear. "This is General Nilkor Vash of the Black Tempest Concordat," the alien began, its translated voice carrying less certainty than before. "Your attack on our sovereign territory constitutes an act of war." "This is Captain Kara Shin of Earth's Nemesis Squadron," she replied evenly. "Your unprovoked assault on our humanitarian fleet resulted in over 3,000 civilian deaths. We are here to ensure such an attack never occurs again." "The corridor you traversed is Concordat territory," Vash insisted. "Your presence was a violation." "That corridor has been neutral space for 50 years, with no registered claims from any species," Kara countered. "Furthermore, even if there had been a territorial dispute, attacking clearly marked humanitarian vessels without warning would still constitute a war crime under interstellar conventions." The alien commander's expression remained unreadable to human eyes, but its posture shifted subtly. "What are your terms?" "Immediate cessation of hostilities. The release of any human prisoners you may have taken. Reparations for the families of those killed in your attack. And a formal agreement recognizing the protected status of humanitarian vessels in all territories." There was a pause as the Varrek commander appeared to consult with others off-screen. Finally, it returned its attention to Kara. "The Concordat does not recognize your authority to make such demands." "Then we will continue our demonstration until you do," Kara replied, her voice hardening. "You've seen what 20 of our ships can do against your defenses. Earth has thousands more. This was, strictly speaking, an exaggeration. Earth couldn't commit thousands of similarly equipped vessels to this conflict, but the Varrek wouldn't know that." "We will not surrender our sovereign rights," Vash declared, though with noticeably less conviction. "Then you leave us no choice but to continue." Kara signaled to Julian to cut the transmission. Once the screen went dark, she turned to Omar. "Prepare a targeted strike on their command station's defensive systems. I want to make it clear we could destroy it entirely if we chose to." "Captain," Elena interjected, her expression concerned, "that station has thousands of civilians aboard, according to our scans." "I'm aware, Elena," Kara replied firmly. "That's why we're targeting only their defensive capabilities, not the station itself. We need to demonstrate that we could destroy it if we wanted to, but are choosing not to, just as they could have warned our humanitarian fleet instead of attacking it." The message was clear to everyone on the bridge. This was about showing restraint, even in the midst of justified retaliation, a contrast to the Varrek's indiscriminate attack on the IRC fleet. "Targeted strike packages ready, Captain," Omar confirmed after a moment. "Precision munitions only. Minimal collateral damage expected." "Execute," Kara ordered. 4 Earth vessels broke formation and advanced toward the command station, evading the remaining Var-Rek ships that moved to intercept them. With surgical precision, they launched a coordinated attack on the station's shield generators and weapons emplacements, neutralizing its defensive capabilities without compromising its structural integrity or life support systems. "Station defenses neutralized," Omar reported. "They're completely vulnerable." "Open a channel to General Vash," Kara commanded. When the Var-Rek commander appeared on screen again, there was a noticeable change in its demeanor. The arrogance had vanished, replaced by a wary recognition of the new power dynamic. "Your station is defenseless," Kara stated without preamble. "We could destroy it entirely, but unlike your forces, we distinguish between military and civilian targets. Now, I'll repeat my terms. Immediate cessation of hostilities, release of any human prisoners, reparations for the families of the deceased, and recognition of humanitarian vessels' protected status." There was a longer pause this time as Vash conferred with others. Finally, the alien turned back to the screen. "We will agree to a cessation of hostilities and the release of survivors from your rescue fleet that we recovered." Kara felt her heart rate quicken. "You have survivors from our fleet?" 47 humans were recovered from damaged vessels, Vash confirmed. "They have been held for interrogation regarding your species' intentions in this region." It took all of Kara's self-control to maintain her composed expression. "Those individuals will be returned immediately, unharmed. As for the other terms..." "The Concordat will consider reparations," Vash interrupted. "But we maintain that the space-time corridor in question is our sovereign territory. We will agree to establish proper notification protocols for any vessels seeking transit, including those on humanitarian missions." It wasn't a complete capitulation, but it was a significant concession. Kara glanced at Colonel Carter, who gave a subtle nod. This outcome would satisfy the minimal requirements set by the Planetary Strategic Council. "Very well," Kara agreed. "We will maintain our position while arrangements are made for the transfer of our people. A formal diplomatic delegation will follow to negotiate the details of our agreement." As the transmission ended, a palpable sense of relief spread through the bridge. They had accomplished their primary objectives without descending into the kind of indiscriminate violence that had characterized the Var-Rek attack on the IRC fleet. "We've shown them Earth isn't helpless," Colonel Carter observed quietly. "And we've done it without becoming what we're fighting against." Kara nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning of a complex and potentially dangerous new chapter in humanity's interstellar relations. The return to Earth was markedly different from their departure. Nemesis Squadron, having accomplished its mission with minimal casualties and significant strategic success, was hailed as a triumphant example of humanity's resolve and capability. For Captain Kara Shin, however, the victory felt hollow. The 47 survivors recovered from the Var-Rek, most of whom had been captured during escape pod evacuations, bore physical and psychological scars that would never fully heal. Their testimonies of their time in captivity only reinforced her belief that the response had been necessary, but did little to ease her discomfort with the militarization of her rescue vessel. The Planetary Strategic Council honored the squadron with a formal ceremony in Geneva, presenting commendations to the officers and crew who had participated in Operation Unforgiven. The public narrative was carefully crafted. Earth had responded to an unprovoked attack with appropriate force, demonstrated restraint where possible, and secured not only the release of prisoners, but also a new understanding with a previously hostile species. What wasn't emphasized in the public celebrations was the precedent that had been set. For the first time, IRC vessels had been weaponized and used in a military operation. The line between humanitarian mission and military action had been blurred in ways that troubled many within the organization. These concerns came to a head 2 weeks after their return, when the Planetary Bioethics Council announced a formal investigation into potential war crimes committed during Operation Unforgiven. while the investigation was ostensibly focused on determining whether the response had been proportionate. It quickly became a lightning rod for broader debates about the militarization of space and the protection of humanitarian principles. Kara found herself at the center of this controversy, called to testify before a special session of the Bioethics Council. As she stood before the assembled dignitaries and ethical experts, she felt the weight of scrutiny from both those who believed she had gone too far and those who thought she hadn't gone far enough. "Captain Shin," began Counselor Ibrahim Muhammad, chair of the special session. "You were the commander of a humanitarian rescue fleet that was attacked without provocation. You then assumed command of a military operation that resulted in the destruction of 37 alien vessels and the deaths of an estimated 523 Varrek. How do you reconcile these two roles?" Kara took a moment to gather her thoughts, aware that her words would be scrutinized by people across Earth and its colonies. "With great difficulty, Counselor," she finally responded. "The IRC was founded on principles of neutrality and humanitarian aid. Taking command of a military operation was never something I envisioned doing when I joined the Corps." "Yet you did so," Muhammad observed. "Why?" "Because the alternative was to accept that humanitarian vessels could be legitimate targets in territorial disputes," Kara answered firmly. "To allow the attack on my fleet to go unanswered would have endangered every future IRC mission. Sometimes protecting humanitarian principles requires demonstrating that there are consequences for violating them." "Could those consequences have been demonstrated with less loss of life?" asked Dr. Amara Okafor, the Council's expert on interspecies ethics. "Possibly," Kara acknowledged. "But it's worth noting that our response was significantly more restrained than the initial attack. We targeted military assets, avoided civilian casualties where possible, and offered multiple opportunities for diplomatic resolution. The Varrek showed no such restraint when they attacked us." The questioning continued for hours, covering every aspect of the operation from the initial decision to accept command to the final negotiations with General Vash. Throughout, Kara maintained that while the militarization of the IRC was troubling, the alternative, allowing attacks on humanitarian vessels to go unanswered, was even more so. "Captain," said Counselor Muhammad as the session neared its end, "you've spoken eloquently about the tactical and strategic considerations that informed your decisions. But I'd like to ask about the personal cost. How has this experience affected you and your crew?" The question caught Kara off guard, penetrating the professional facade she had maintained throughout the hearing. For a moment, she was silent, memories flashing through her mind. The initial attack, the rows of civilian bodies, the faces of her crew as they transformed from rescuers to warriors. "It has changed us," she finally said, her voice softer now. "The IRC attracts people who want to save lives, not take them. Even those of us with military backgrounds joined the Corps because we wanted to build rather than destroy. Operation Unforgiven required us to return to a mindset many had deliberately left behind." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But the greater cost would have been to do nothing, to allow the murder of thousands of civilians to go unanswered, to signal to the galaxy that humanitarian missions are easy targets. That was a cost I was not willing to accept." As the hearing concluded, Kara found Dr. Lehman waiting for her outside the chamber. The physician had also testified, offering a more critical perspective on the militarization of the IRC, while acknowledging the difficult circumstances that had necessitated the response. "That went as well as could be expected," Min observed, as they walked together through the council's gardens. "Though I suspect this debate is far from over." "It shouldn't be over," Kara replied. "We should be uncomfortable with what happened. The moment we become casual about transforming rescue ships into warships is the moment we lose something essential about who we are." Min nodded, appreciating her perspective. "The question is whether we can maintain our humanitarian principles in a galaxy that doesn't always respect them." "That's always been the question," Kara said with a sad smile. Long before we reached the stars. In the weeks that followed, the Bioethics Council issued its findings. While Operation Unforgiven had been justified given the circumstances, they recommended stricter protocols to govern any future militarization of humanitarian assets. They also called for enhanced diplomatic efforts to ensure that the protected status of rescue missions was recognized across known space. For Captain Kara Shin and the crew of the Aegis 7, the future remained uncertain. The ship was being restored to its original configuration, its weapon systems removed, and its medical facilities expanded once again. They would return to the work of saving lives rather than taking them. But something had changed, not just in their ship, but in themselves. They had witnessed both the depths of cruelty the universe could offer and the uncomfortable truths about humanity's capacity for retribution. They had been forced to balance competing moral imperatives, the commitment to peace and the necessity of self-defense, in circumstances where no perfect solution existed. As Kara stood on the observation deck of the newly recommissioned Aegis 7, watching the Earth recede as they departed for their next humanitarian mission, she found herself contemplating the words she had spoken to the Bioethics Council. The greater cost would have been to do nothing. She believed that still. Yet she also recognized the danger in such reasoning, how easily the justification of necessary force could slide into rationalization of unnecessary violence. It would be her responsibility, and that of every commander who followed, to navigate that fine line with wisdom and restraint. The stars stretched before them, vast and filled with both promise and peril. Humanity had demonstrated its capacity for ruthless retaliation when provoked. The challenge now would be to ensure that same resolve was tempered by the compassion and humanitarian principles that represented the best of what humans could be. It was a balance Kara would strive for, even knowing that perfect equilibrium might never be achieved. In the complex moral landscape of interstellar relations, perhaps that striving itself, the constant questioning, the refusal to accept easy answers, was the most humanity could hope for. And for now, that would have to be enough.